Hi, everyone. Just giving everyone a couple minutes to join, and then we'll get started. All right, we can go ahead and get started. Yat shikedo shidine she e karina sabiku yenishe tachini nishle hawatlana bushishtin tohaglini dashiche my dishkini dashanella. Good afternoon, my friends and relatives. My name is Corina Savicu. I'm Dene and Hamus Pueblo. I'm from the Red Running into the Water clan, born from many Hogons. I'm a senior research program coordinator here at the Mayo Clinic, located in Rochester, Minnesota. I'd like to welcome you all to the Indigenous Health Topics Speaker Series as part of our Native American community outreach efforts to engage tribal health. We host this event, which is focused on hosting speakers who are local, regional, and national experts in health education and research. All of our presentations are focused on topics that have an impact on our Native American, Alaska Native communities. All our presentations are recorded and posted on our internal website. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today to listen and learn. I just want to go through a few housekeeping items here. So we will have time at the end of our presentation for questions and answers. Please add any of your questions to the Q&A chat box, and we will get to at the end of the presentation. All right, and today we have Dr. Daniel Dickerson. He will be presenting on integrating traditional practices within substance use prevention and treatment programs, results from community-based research. So a little bit more about Dr. Dickerson. He is an addiction psychiatrist and associate research psychiatrist at UCLA Integrated Substance Abuse Programs. His research focuses on the development and analysis of substance use treatment and prevention programs for American Indian, Alaska Native youth and adults. He has conducted research as principal investigator or co-principal investigator on various National Institutes of Health funded studies, including Traditions and Connections for Urban Native Americans, Native American Youth Sleep Health and Wellness, Motivational Interviewing and Culture for Urban Native American Youth, and Drum-Assisted Recovery Therapy for Native Americans. His research also focuses on the implementation of promising practices for Native American communities. All right, and with that said, I will stop sharing my screen and hand it off to Dr. Dickerson.
Yeah, so Vango Uniarag, Sigaban Koya Miagwa Wainwright. I'm Dan Dickerson. I'm a Nupiaq on my mother's side from the Sigaban family in Wainwright, Alaska. I'm Western European on my father's side. And yes, thank you so much, Karina and Guthrie, for inviting me to present today. It's an honor to be able to talk with you all on some work that I've been honored to be a part of. See if my PowerPoint's working. Yes, you know, I'm in LA County, and here in LA County, we acknowledge the lands that we are on, including the Gabriano, Chumash, Tataviam peoples. And I also respectfully thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present in your lands, wherever you are. And I acknowledge your lands as well throughout Indian country. You know, we definitely recognize that we're all interrelated and share some common beliefs in that regard. Just a little bit about myself. As I mentioned, I'm half Inupiaq, which is Eskimo. We're a circumpolar tribe. We are around the North Pole, Russia, Greenland, Canada, and Alaska. And I grew up in Long Beach, California, far away from the Arctic coast. Literally in the Arctic coast of Alaska is our village of Wainwright, where my mother grew up. My father was in the Army, Caucasian, grew up in Kansas. He was stationed in Anchorage. I met my mom. From there, my dad was restationed to Texas, where I was born. And then as a very young baby, moved to California. So I think we all have unique stories, you know, as Indigenous or Native people, we're very diverse. We come from many different stories. Yeah, so I think that my example is just one of a very different, unexpected kind of story about, you know, who we are as Native people. I'm the first one to graduate college in my family. I went to a couple of community colleges in LA, throughout LA County, and then had never traveled much before, and I took it as an opportunity to move to travel. I went to Georgia to finish my undergrad in biochemistry, and then was fortunately accepted to medical school at Western University of Health Sciences in LA County, where I'm an osteopathic physician, a DO, basically similar to an MD. And I did my residency at Loma Linda University Medical Center and addiction psychiatry training at Yale University for 2 years. I've been at UCLA since 2007. I'm also a clinician, so I serve Native American clients in LA County at a Native agency since 2007 as well. And I think that's my research meaningful. You know, I tend to focus more on urban Native American populations, which I'll talk about in just a second. You know, yeah, so unfortunately our people have, you know, we have experienced various forms of historical trauma since initial European contact and also Russian contact. Many may not know that Russians came to Alaska, and there's very similar stories of historical trauma in Alaska on that side of our Turtle Island. And then in both regard, you know, alcohol was introduced quickly and had an unfortunate, you know, really negative or devastating impact, and the results of colonization, relocation to urban areas, you know, prohibiting our spiritual practices, forced placement to boarding schools, then our ability to really utilize and harness our traditional practices, all in an attempt to quote unquote get rid of the Indian problem. And in addition, historical trauma has had an impact and has created a kind of confusing state of our cultural identity. and who we are as Native people. Are kind of also some disconnection to our culture. It may be difficult, for example, to really feel like you're a part of the Native American community or culture, even in urban areas where it's very large and very confusing. At least where I grew up in LA County, I did not even know there was a Native community. It wasn't within my conscious that there were other Native people to connect with and to help with my own cultural journey. And even opportunities to engage in traditional practices are more limited in urban areas in general. There's a lot of different variation to that, however. So I've spent my career so far in looking at ways where we can help to address the impact of historical trauma on as it relates to substance use and interventions that could, really hopefully resonate with our people. And many may not realize that we have urban Native Americans and we have you're from res. You're one or the other. You're this type or you're that. But in reality, there's various a lot of diversity. Many of us go back and forth. Well, I'm in connection with my whole village and other relatives in Alaska via Facebook has been amazing, right? I mean, we're able to really learn about our culture, especially those of us who live in urban areas. We could really have some connection with our relatives on reservations, rancherias, villages. So yeah, in urban areas, there's been definite challenges to really be a part of the community, less visibility. It's, in LA, we have the largest population of Native Americans, one of the very largest compared to any other county, but that's 0.6 of 1%, however, of the large population. So it's hard to see that. And with that, there's unfortunately the risk for being exposed to discrimination and other social injustices and health disparities. But all that being said, we focus more and more on resiliency. Instead, we know the facts, we know, what's been impacted on us, but now I think more and more we're talking and hearing about and discussing, okay, how do we become more present? And so how do we, resiliency is kind of a key word, and that includes learning about our culture, regardless of where you are on the spectrum of your identity, in order to feel proud of who you are, mixed race, Native, 100% Native, whatever we are, wherever you grew up, whatever your story, feeling proud of who we are and having, more solid self esteem in that regard. Engaging with our community, connecting with our family, our elders, participating or learning about our traditional practices. And that all may help to create, a more solid sense of ourselves as individuals, family, and community members, and where we could then be strong in the face of discrimination and other social injustices. So part of all this is then learning about our culture. There's traditional practices, and I may be preaching to the choir, so to speak. But traditional practices are very diverse according to your tribal traditions and history and where you grew up. These are just a few examples, but I think the take-home message is there's a lot of different traditional practices, and it's not just drumming and dancing or beating. And of course, those are great, but there's all kinds of different traditional practices. different types of activities according to your own interests, and what's available to you. And even just learning about our culture. My mother wasn't a dancer or drummer, but she was at all of our ceremonies and community events and present at them, and spoke her language, etc. So there's a lot of different different types of traditional practices that our people can learn more about. And the benefits from our people, from our elders, are that it could help to create healthier lifestyles. You know, our traditions are focused on the inner connections of physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, to live more balanced life, to learn about our culture and connect with others. So one of the first, I guess one of my first projects I've been involved with is motivational interviewing and culture for urban Native American youth. So this, I've been fortunate enough, you know, I'm in UCLA. The RAND Corporation is in Santa Monica, very close, you know, maybe 7 miles from UCLA's campus. And I was honored enough to meet Elizabeth Tomiko, and her team at the RAND Corporation. She's a motivational interviewing kind of world expert in that way, in motivational interviewing. She's really, really expert. In motivational interviewing, I really don't have a slide on that specifically, but it is an evidence-based treatment that I believe Native American people in general tend to resonate with. So we met and we talked, we developed a relationship, and together with Dr. Carrie Johnson from Sacred Path Indigenous Wellness Center, who's a long-term collaborator. She's used to be my boss as a clinician. We developed kind of an approach to integrate or to mix Native American traditions with motivational interviewing. And it's basically, and I'll review the workshops in just a second. It's really a prevention intervention for urban Native American youth, ages 14 to 18. As I mentioned, it integrates traditional healing or some cultural practices with MI. And in order to develop, if I may just take a step back, when we're looking at interventions for substance use prevention or treatment for Native people, you know, we've been impacted by substance use for many, many years, for hundreds of years even, and very few solutions or new ideas have been proposed, you know, but there has been a lot of steam generated, you know, with using traditional practices with Doncahoyas and Wobryety, the Red Road. And then the National Institutes of Health has also created, thankfully, a research avenue for those who do research in Indian country through the ARENA program, IRINAH, where they've funded, I think, over 50 different programs, of which Makune is one of those, that really provide a way for there to be research on culturally appropriate interventions for a wide variety of health issues, including substance use. So that's where this program was funded through. But to start research, first of all, the word research is full of some history in the past that was not so great. We were succumbed to unethical research. My own grandmother was part of an unethical study in Alaska many years ago. And part of the reason is that some researchers have used to go into communities, do study, really offer the community something promising, but then would leave the community without any final products. So they call that like helicopter research, where researchers came in, they got paid through the grant, they published articles, and then they left to the next grant and left the communities kind of dry afterwards without being able to use the research. So nowadays, more so, not that everything's perfect yet, there's a push towards community-based participatory research where we engage communities through every step of the research process, from the idea to what surveys we should use to the type of research, sharing results, and not having it being this kind of university endeavor. It's community first, right? That's how we are as Native people. We're about the community. So that we generated our idea from the community, and furthermore, we first started this research, and of our research actually, by conducting focus groups to really try to really discuss our idea, which is coming from the community, and then to really work out the details of the intervention that's being developed. And then after the community provides the input and feedback and direction, we then are able to design, in this case, a randomized controlled trial, and then hopefully be able to learn more about the potential benefits of the study. So Makune, and in order to do this, as mentioned, you need partnerships, you need visibility with Native agencies and Native researchers and assistants if possible. Unfortunately, however, there's very few, and compared to other race ethnic groups, very few researchers who are Native and with Native research teams. So there is a need for more researchers who can be involved with protocols. And this program, by the way, was done in California. These are various California organizations that were part of our project. So we developed the program, and the final product was 3 workshops with 1 hour motivational interviewing, with each workshop having 1 hour motivational interviewing followed by an hour of a traditional practice. Workshop 1, we had motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing, by the way, helps to create they would call it intrinsic reasons to change. So helping someone to develop their own reasons to quitting drugs or not using drugs and alcohol, rather than, for instance, a police or parents or teachers saying, hey, you got to quit using drugs and alcohol. That tends to only work so far. So really what you want ultimately is for our people, our clients, our relatives to be able to make that decision themselves and to proceed forward. So that's what motivational interviewing tries to do. And there's a couple, we've used Kamala Venners out at University of New Mexico. She's Athabascan. and she's developed an amazing native version of MI, which we use in this program. So that all being said, we use a 1 hour motivational interviewing followed by 1 hour traditional practice, and we had workshop 1, we had beading as our traditional practice. Workshop 2, we had cooking and native foods, and workshop 3, sage and smudging and ceremony. And this was really an opportunity to create an opportunity and to help meet natives, with a diverse population, urban areas, with some kind of program that's kind of general to our urban community. These are just some examples of how we use what we use in our workshops. We would focus on the medicine wheel and education medicine wheel on the effects of alcohol and drugs on the brain. I'll show you a couple of examples here in a second. What happens when you use drugs and alcohol, thinking about your future, thinking ahead, approaching various social situations. And we found out in our work, in our preliminary focus groups, that teens, urban teens, liked learning and seeing brain imagery. So this is just an example of a handout we talk about and show. Also, they wanted some handouts that were kind of urban. They liked their Native American typical sceneries and motifs in handouts, but they also wanted some urban touches. And the coyote, I have to admit, the coyote is maybe a bit much. we put this one just an example. The coyote is a trickster in an urban area, and then kind of the path of choices and the path that might lead to addiction in terms of using. And just this is an example of a handout that we would use in this program. We also created a logo with a Native American artist, and the youth directed what they would want to see in a logo. They wanted a native feel, but with an urban, some urban imagery. So we created, Robert Young, our amazing artist, native artist in LA, created a few different logos, and they chose and selected this one as our final logo. And we were able to recruit in a randomized controlled trial 185 participants between the ages of 14 and 18. Substance use was rates similar to the general population in general, in terms of alcohol, cannabis, cigarettes. And then we were able to gather some data on family use and peer use, as well, to understand some potential triggers to using, or and to understand their lives a bit more. And one of the key findings was that most of the sample experienced some form of discrimination. And these are just some examples from Karina Walters' survey, University of Washington, who does amazing work with Native people. And these are just some examples of types of discrimination and microaggressions that this sample of 185 experienced. And most of the sample had participated in some degree of traditional practices. And this may be in part because we recruited, with flyers at Native agencies and at Native events. For example, we have booths at powwows, or we provide discussions at community centers to recruit. Yes, and their participants just needed to self-identify as being Native. And in a nutshell, we were able to gather really some valuable information regarding drug and alcohol use, the potential benefits of Mikune. We compared Mikune to a monthly wellness gathering. So you could either have Mikune with a community wellness gathering or just a community wellness gathering, kind of a educational and native gathering monthly where community members could learn more about the culture, and we had a variety of presenters who provided educational events. And we had a high level of retention, many and high satisfaction rates. And the key finding was that although and with Native youth, you tend to have increases of alcohol use as you get older, especially from 14 to 18. There's a definite increase in potential use. Here in our sample over time, rates remain stable. So that was a very promising finding that hopefully there was some effect from the program, or from both programs that had culture involved to help decrease the potential for alcohol and other drug use. Yes, so we're thankful to have our community advisory board members, including Janet King, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago, and acknowledge our funders and the RAND Corporation team as well, including Dr. D'Amico. So I thought I'd provide in this presentation two examples or two parts of my work. What I'm going to focus on for the next 15 minutes or so is drum-assisted recovery therapy for Native Americans, DARTNAV. So when I first, and this is a substance use treatment intervention, and I just wanted to kind of pinpoint how this program evolved. First of all, these are not new ideas. We're just using our culture and hopefully in a way that's acceptable and done in a good way that's for our people. These are sacred activities and ceremonies and belong to our people, so they weren't necessarily, or they were not created for the four walls of a clinic, concrete walls of a clinic somewhere. So we really have to be careful and do things correctly and engage. That's another reason for engaging our elders and community people, is to make sure we don't further contribute to various unjust practices that have created with our people, and to keep our traditions strong. So we really have to do things, definitely with community-based participation. So when I was attending some community events and gatherings, I was able to meet many drummers and leaders, but one person, Tony Robichaud, really was really impressed with the drum making workshop he was holding for a Native community tribal organization in Southern California. He was providing a drum making workshop for youth, and he gave youth certificates and cards. It says something along the lines of, you kind of print your name on the certificate, Johnny or Kathy, today I made my first drum as a Native teenager, and I'm taking I'm taking a pledge not to use drugs and alcohol. It wasn't exactly that, but it was something that was really strong. And I was thinking, wow, if that's not prevention, I don't know, or treatment, I don't know what is. So we created an initial program, and because we recognize that drumming is a very really commonly used activity throughout many tribes, although not all tribes drum. It's used throughout the world even, and it symbolizes a lot of our history, carries our stories. It's really a healthy social event. It brings people together, especially out of addiction. That's a disease of isolation oftentimes, to really bring people out to this opportunity we thought could be potentially, of course, good. And again, it's not a new idea, just an idea in terms of helping to create, the need for interventions for Native people that are not just only Western based. So one example of just a quote from an anonymous person is that one person mentioned that drum connected this person to what she hadn't known before. And as you can see, this individual really was impacted by being able to drum and being connected, and really hopefully being able to overcome her own historical traumas. And many don't realize that in addition to the cultural benefits, there are neurobiological benefits. Dr. Barry Bittman out of University of Washington and others have found, and he's done research with various populations, has found that the drumming itself synchronizes in preliminary studies, synchronizes brain activity. For example, the limbic system connected to the prefrontal cortex, so it helps potentially perhaps regulate emotions, see clearer, have improved focus and insights, and helps with kind of being in a meditative state, which has good benefits on the brain, with including the alpha and theta waves. But with traditional practices, can we use this appropriately? What are the common issues that our people or elders or teachers may encounter, or what do we need to know if we're providers or policymakers who are working in Native communities? So we developed a preliminary program of using education, drumming, and a talking circle within a session. Of course, being told and knowing that you don't just jump in and start drumming typically. Of course, it depends on your tradition and your teachers, but typically you learn first about drumming and the songs, and then really have an elder or teacher help guide the first songs or approaches. So then we end our sessions with a talking circle. And the first session is focused on making your own drum, or making, in LA, what's more common is a powwow drumming, either northern or southern style. So it really depends on your community's traditions. And our last version, where there's various lengths that we're working with presently, but we focus on the 12 steps of AA, more on the Wellbriety Tonkahoyas approach, and we look at the different dimensions of wellness as well and throughout the workshops. And right now we've had 6 sessions in our most recent study, which I'll mention in a minute. So we did focus groups, then a pre-test, and then we finalized our manual. And we found that the focus groups that participants said that, drumming can be useful, but you need to have a cultural-based focus rather than quote unquote a new age focus, a treatment that in the urban areas kind of addresses diversity of tribes, tribal diversity, and gender roles as well. And this study was published, or these focus groups we published. It's now been 12 years since we did our first publication on this program, and we have some quotes here from our community advisory board of the importance of connecting to culture and strengthening your identity, and teaching, the importance of teaching about drumming in the program. And in our pre-test, we found promising, and this was just among 10 individuals to get their initial impressions. But while we were at it, we provided some assessments and we found promising benefits with regard to medical status, psychiatric status, spirituality, physical functioning levels. And this helped then, and then our people in this program thought that this was a really program that they enjoyed, as you can see by these quotes. Opportunity to connect and feel spiritual connection. So then we were able to obtain a grant to conduct a small feasibility randomized controlled trial. So we randomized individuals to either Dartna or a educational substance use program. Most were males who were in this study, and many were in an inpatient program, but the primary goal of this grant was just to get further information and input from individuals and to really hopefully show that we could do these studies feasibly in preparation for a larger study. And in the end of this feasibility trial, which we randomized, recruited 63 Native people for substance use, adults. This was for adults for substance use treatment. We found the significant finding, meaning statistically significant, was that there was lower cognitive impairment, so improved cognition and lower counts of physical complaints or ailments. And these cognitive benefits kept up 3 months later in terms of, for those who were in Dartna. So those who were in drumming had improved cognition, and those in Dartna at the end of treatment had fewer drinks per day, promising benefits here of fewer drinks per day and lower odds of marijuana or cannabis. However, 3 months later, those in Dartna had reported more drinks per day and more commercialized cigarette use. So we found this as surprising. And we spoke with our elders. We published on this in 2021. We spoke with our elders who our community advisory board, saying what could be happening here. And they felt that that after this, there's very few opportunities to drum, unless if the elders or the drumming groups or the powwow circuits in the urban area of LA. You can't, for example, I don't think you go on Google or Yelp and put in drumming and go to your local native drumming group. That just doesn't exist. So you really have to have connection opportunities to continue the program. And these programs, by the way, are made in a sense to be an introduction to just begin the journey of engaging with your culture. But that being said, hopefully also having a benefit through substance use. So the elders felt that there needs to be more linkages. It's just like if you attend a Sunday service at a church, or you go to LA Fitness or a health gym, you in any spiritual or healthy practice, it's a long-term commitment in a way. So our elders felt that that's what's needed in order to help also with, decreasing relapse as well, to keep up kind of the healthy traditions and learning opportunities. So those are just some snapshots of a couple of programs that I've been a part of. We currently are doing a virtual program nationwide called Takuna, which we'll have more data on in the future. But thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Dickerson, for that wonderful presentation. That would be awesome if we could just Google a drum group and find them in that way, but unfortunately, that's not possible. It was really good that you talked about the importance and effectiveness of culturally tailored interventions. It's really good to hear that you've had success in that area. And I'm just going to go ahead and pass it on to Guthrie to go ahead and get some of the questions we have for you.
Yeah, I want to echo Karina's sentiments there. It's nice to see things tailored towards the community, and the way you went about CBPR here, I think, is fantastic. So we do have a few questions from Jeff. Do you incorporate prayer into your motivational interviewing intervention? How about food, song, dance, etc.?
Yes. So we are, and this would be depending on we selected, by the way, recognized leaders or drummers in our program. So they were, to me, the experts in this regard. So I highly trusted. So, and known in our community. So they would typically begin and close with prayer, begin with tobacco offering, or smudging, depending on their own ways that they felt good with. So that's how we typically use prayer and sacred plants. And then in our program, we also we had 1 hour of just no drumming, just teaching, talking, learning about 12 steps, and that also includes spirituality.
Awesome. Charles has a question about tobacco use within Native populations. He's wondering, how do you address tobacco use, commercial versus traditional, and ceremonial versus non-ceremonial tobacco?
Yes, yeah, this was, I have to admit, a substance use. It was more focused on alcohol and drugs, but that being said, we also did have discussion on tobacco, or we did approach our facilitators, did talk about tobacco and the importance of recognizing and teaching about commercialized versus traditional uses of tobacco. So that was taught, and we did even talk about that. We would have supervision, or I wouldn't call it supervision, discussions with our facilitators throughout, kind of on a weekly basis, and we would talk about addressing tobacco use, although this was not, we're hoping to have a study with tobacco, actually, and with this program. So hopefully we'll be able to address that even further in another study.
It seems like talking about traditional tobacco use is much more sort of within research and kind of the landscape now. rather than avoiding commercial, but that's whole nother topic. We've got Ryan, who is Dene and a veteran. He's got a longer, so he's been a part of a lot of these behavioral therapies, he said. And he used an example of inner healing by itself or healing in conjunction with psychedelics as something that's happening out in the space. But his question really is, as Indigenous people, how do we maintain our that's a toughie. Traditional healing practices in a landscape of potential bad actors.
Yeah, I love that question because because that is a totally, I mean, the use of, and I've been, kind of approached in some conversations, well-intended conversations about this topic, but the use of, I mean, even first of all, the term psychedelics. First of all, is that what we use? And there are some articles on the use of psychedelics, emerging use of psychedelics, psilocybin, even LSD and others, and that really well-known one in South America. I don't want to mess up the name, but there's some that are definitely being used, and there's a push of research, and I bet some of them are going to be approved. I mean, this is just my own, this is just strictly me talking, no one else. But I bet some are going to be approved, and so then it opens up this Pandora's box of native culture and native, and those who aren't non-native say, hey, Native Americans have been doing this for centuries. Let's learn what they're doing. Let's incorporate all of their teachings and let's tell the world about it. And this is why we need, psychedelics. This is because Native Americans have always used psychedelics, and let's learn from them. Let's have them talk about this with us. And I think it's, well intended, but not sometimes, often, but not appropriate in my opinion. So, so there needs to be, and that's not to say this, and this is just me talking, answering the question. There could be some use, I mean, I don't know, we need some more, but my final opinion is that we just need further. I don't think we've had enough discussions formally with tribal. There have been some, but I think we probably need more discussions to get ahead of the 8 ball on this one.
Yeah, no, and I think he had a longer question. I think, he had a longer question. I think psychedelics is one of them, but just, that some of the public health options are going towards traditional therapies as reimbursable therapies. And so that just sort of invites, anybody and everybody to say, oh, I've got a traditional therapy option. But Karina, what do you think? Do we have time for one more question? There's a few more questions yet. Do you want to hang out here or do you want to get transitioned?
Let's do a couple more. Do the last one in the Q&A and one in the comment.
Yeah. So Trudy asked, how receptive are Native youth when motivational interviewing is implemented within urban areas? And then also were peers trained in that space as well?
Yes. Yeah, our Native youth seems to really like that motivational interviewing because it's, from what I see, it's an engaging kind of approach that, I mean, a lot of youth in general, teenagers feel like their voice doesn't matter, right? Or that you need to kind of shut up because you don't know what you're talking about. I'm just saying, they get this kind of, but they appreciate being heard, right? They appreciate having the opportunity to talk about their own, what they think's important, what they think matters, their legit concerns. So I think motivation interviewing offers that opportunity for a teen to answer, talk about stuff, and not to be ridiculed or judged or told that that's wrong or whatever. So from my point of view, I think from what I experienced in this study, that I think they liked the motivation interviewing. We did train our facilitators. Elizabeth D'Amico herself is Mint certified trainer, MI, I forget what it stands for. It's a real official trainer for MI. And then Dr. Carrie Johnson's actually implementing this program for teens right now virtually. And she is training peers. So we are having youth or young people deliver this program in a community right now, and led more by young people than us older people, older research types.
Funny how that happens pretty quick. Oh, I see Karina's transitioning us.
Yeah, someone put up the Mint. That's a good source for training, by the way. Thank you, Lydia.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was unmuted. Before anyone jumps off, I just wanted to mention that we do have a survey I posted in the chat, but also if you have a phone on hand, you could scan this QR code to complete a short survey to provide feedback on our speaker series. That would be really great and appreciated. And also, our next guest speaker will be April 18th. Guthrie, go ahead and let everyone know about the Zoom link.
Oh, sure. Perfect. We've got a couple more questions. So if folks want to hang on with us, we're going to jump over to just a Zoom space so we can be face to face, or face to blank screen, either way, but an opportunity to stop recording and have informal discussion. Did see that there's some more there. So we're going to jump over here. Please do use that Zoom link that I just posted. I'll hang out for a minute and close out the webinar. So Dr. Dickerson and Karina can go jump in the Zoom space, and hopefully we'll see you there, and look forward to seeing everybody next month. So this was fantastic.
Bye, thanks.
Are you guys going to jump over?
Yes.
Catch you there in a minute. All right. For those hanging out, I'm going to just drop it in there one more time. Give you guys a few seconds. And then Terrence, I did see your question. I think it's a good question. Sorry we didn't get to ask it. Please do hop over to the informal Zoom if you want to connect and ask them about that with the horse therapy. All right, I'm going to count down just in my head, and then I'm going to close it out. Okay, thanks everyone. Dope shot. Okay.